Welcome to the mother relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Per a tweet from Michael Benson, it appears that David Benavidez versus David Morrell is now agreed for either October or November. Benavidez's promoter, Samson Lukowicz, has confirmed.
Let me get this straight. You left an offer for Canelo Alvarez on the table for approximately 5 or 6 days so that you could go fight a guy.
Guy nobody knows. Guy with, 9, maybe 10 fights?
And the fight you're going to have with this guy is all the way out there in either October or November in the fall when summer just started.
You would have thought that if David Benavidez and Samson Lukowicz really had their hearts set on a Canelo Alvarez fight, they would have given him more time.
Yeah.
More time than just 5 or 6 days. More time to mull it over. More time to think about it. Now that the Badu Jack fight has fallen through.
Maybe Canelo would have given that offer a little bit more consideration if they would have given Canelo more time.
And again, I'm not easily swayed, easily convinced by things that Team Benavidez says, things that Samson Lukowicz...
Don't forget that before David Benavidez decisioned Caleb Plant, Samson Lukowicz made it known, he said it publicly, that David Morrell would follow, that would be the fight that David Benavidez has should he beat Caleb Plant.
Here we are. In truth, Benavidez versus Morrell is an intriguing fight, at least to me. It's intriguing, though not for the reasons you might think. It's because David Benavidez...
He's basic.
He's a basic fighter. He's a slow, flat-footed plotter.
Not much to him.
He's got a good engine, though. Whereas David Morrell, he exhibits a good ceiling, good shot selection, good ability, speed, athleticism, snappy punches, but the drawback for him is that he doesn't have as many rounds in the bank as David Benavidez, that he is a more green fighter comparatively. Even if he seems to have the right base style for the job, he ain't got the right level of experience, and that creates an air of intrigue between them, though. For me and my money, the better fight would have been Benavidez versus Bivol.
Bivol's free.
Bivol ain't got no dance partner. It doesn't look like he's going to be fighting Canelo Alvarez for a second time, and I vaguely recall David Benavidez saying that he'd go up there and he'd knock Dimitri Bivol out.
Empty promises.
So here you have the man who beat Canelo Alvarez.
Right.
And David Benavidez's team make no effort to fight him. The same team Benavidez that claimed they had $40 million for Canelo Alvarez didn't use any of that money to bankroll a fight with Dimitri Bivol.
You wouldn't have had to pay him $40 million.
Or is it that you don't actually have $40 or $50 million or whatever it was unless Canelo Alvarez is involved, which begs the question, how legitimate is your offer?
Was your offer, I should say, since they took it off the table.
It's almost like you're offering Canelo Alvarez money that he already has, money that only he is good for, because David Benavidez by himself is nowhere near a $40 million fighter.
Consider that it took Samson Lukowicz approximately 4 years to finally put David Benavidez in the ring with Caleb Plant.
That took 4 years when the subject was first broached. 4 years ago, before the pandemic in 2019.
We here with Samson, man. How you doing, man?
Very good.
First of all, we got to ask you, did you watch Caleb Plant last week?
Yes, I watch it.
And tell us your thoughts on the Caleb Plant performance.
I'll be honest with you, I need to recognize that he proved me wrong. He's a great fighter.
He's a great fighter.
I thought I know him when he used to be in about 10 fights. I thought that he's a regular white boy. But not. He's a real deal. I really like him very much.
Now, Caleb Plant just posted on his social medias that you said that David Benavidez versus Caleb Plant needs to take more time. Why?
Look, this business is for two reasons. Make money and more money. I'm pretty sure that Plant he want more money as well as Benavidez. So now really nobody knows much about the two great fighters, like the youngest super middleweight of David Benavidez. People know, but not the regular in the street. You go to any place, I got from Caleb Plant, or David Benavidez. You need another two good fights, and then you can go to be a pay-per-view.
The obvious answer fans would say, well, we want the best fighting the best. We're tired of paying for C versus D. We want A versus A.
Well, you have two A's No
That's
doubt.
what I mean. 2 A's and David
But
Benavidez and Caleb
to
Plant.
see two A fighters, you need to pay. You cannot be for free.
Samson Lukowicz said that he wanted to wait. He wanted to wait to do that fight, let David have a couple of title defenses back when he was a champion.
Wanted the fight to grow.
Approximately 4 years later, doesn't seem like the fight grew much at all, it being that he finally put David in there with Caleb, and the pay-per-view sold under 100,000 buys.
Took you 4 years to do that fight just so it would sell at or around 100,000 buys. For that, you might as well have done it in 2019 when they were both champions.
Waited 4 years to do that fight just so it could sell next to nothing. Needless to say that David Benavidez here today is nowhere near a $40 million fighter. But Samson Lukowicz claims that they had $40 mil for Canelo, so why didn't they take some of that money and see about doing a Bivol fight?
Right.
Bivol versus Benavidez for the WBA title at light heavyweight would move the needle a lot more than a Morrell fight.
David said he'd knock Dimitri out.
Yeah, David says a lot of things. He doesn't follow up on most of them.
Said he was going to knock Caleb Plant out, and it went 12 rounds.
And I think Dimitri Bivol would play with a basic and ordinary fighter, a no-frills fighter like David Benavidez, but what I think is no substitute for an actual fight, an actual contest, and it being that David Benavidez's next fight, the one with Morrell, it's not for a full title, it's not a full title fight. Why waste time on that when Dimitri Bivol is free? The opportunity to become a two-division champion, the opportunity to show up Canelo Alvarez.
Canelo gets a lot of stick for losing that fight to Dimitri Bivol, but I don't see anybody in any hurry to fight Dimitri.
They classify him in some circles, ignorant ones,
Full of stupid and useless people.
as a cherry, a quote-unquote cherry pick gone wrong. Myself, I didn't identify Dimitri Bivol as a cherry at all. In fact, I classified that fight for Canelo at that time as the most dangerous fight that he could be in, a potential banana skin.
Not a basic piece of shit like David Benavidez.
Now that we know what Dimitri Bivol can do, what he did to Canelo Alvarez, why aren't more fighters in a hurry to get in the ring with him, to show up Canelo, show him how it's done? Maybe it's because they can't.
Not a basic piece of shit like David.
If you're a fan of him, you're a fucking idiot.
Slightly retarded.
Fuck you.
Fuck David Benavidez.
Who made no effort to get in the ring with the man who beat Canelo Alvarez. He will instead fight a little-known Cuban fighter with about 9 or 10 fights.
On pay-per-view, I've no doubts.
I mean, Benavidez versus Bivol, that's a box office fight. That's box office worthy. But David Benavidez versus little-known Cuban fighter with no signature fights and no big names on his resume, a fighter who really hasn't even been built.
It's not a draw yet. Not a draw by any stretch of the imagination.
I mean, it's a good fight, but it's not a box office fight. It's not pay-per-view worthy. I wonder how the people at Showtime will elect to build this fight. Will it be a regular Showtime fight or a pay-per-view? Just in keeping with the theme of all things Canelo Alvarez, now that the Badu Jack fight has fallen through and David Benavidez is spoken for, Eddie Hearn says, you can't expect Charlo, Jermall Charlo, to be competitive against Canelo in a September fight. I don't, though in truth I never did.
Jamal is garbage.
Always was. Another PBC hype job that's not good for anything. According to Mike Kopinger of ESPN, Charlo is emerging as a frontrunner for Alvarez's second outing in September. Despite being big, strong, and powerful, Eddie Hearn not only believes that Charlo won't win, but he's also convinced that he'll get steamrolled. You can't expect Charlo to be competitive against Canelo in a September fight coming off of 2 years, said Hearn during an interview with Fight Hub TV. During his explanation, Hearn pointed to Charlo's biggest obstacle, rust, and a lot of it.
He could have had the fight years ago when Oscar De La Hoya first offered it. In those days, Canelo was promoted by Golden Boy Promotions, and as you can imagine, nobody at the PBC wanted to send Jamal over to them.
The story was that Jermall Charlo rejected said offer, and I believe it. Of course I believe it. That's the PBC's MO.
For the longest time it was. They're only now starting to loosen their vice grip on their fighters, what we see with the Stephen Fulton versus Naoya Inoue fight.
They're actually allowing him to do it, though at the same time, doesn't that then mean that these fighters could have crossed the street for some of these fights that could have happened the last couple of years, and they're the ones that chose not to?
That's what it means, and that means that Charlo could have and should have had this fight years ago when it was first offered to him. Now, he's coming off of 2 years of inactivity.
And I don't pity him, I don't.
No,
Up
no,
until
no.
recently, Canelo Alvarez was accused of avoiding this fighter, even though he already offered him the fight years ago, up until recently, up until the fight was actually...
Till now, they've been accusing Canelo of ducking this guy, only so when Charlo emerges as the front runner, they move the goalpost.
Yeah.
Now they're saying Canelo's only fighting him because he's been inactive.
Nothing that Canelo Alvarez does, in the eyes of his critics, in the eyes of his bluebirds, will satisfy what they want, because what they want is to see him fall.
Yes.
What they want is to see him fail.
But he did lose to Dimitri Bivol, didn't he?
And that's not enough. It only angers them even more that, in spite of that loss, in spite of having 2 career blemishes and a draw on his record, he still remains the most dominant force at the box office in this country. Not those pieces of shit that they like.
Piece of crap like David Benavidez or Demetrius Andrade.
A hapless absentee champion in Jermall Charlo. These useless, fucking useless fighters that aren't worth anything.
Why do they support them?
Tribalism.
Yeah.
In a word, it's plain old tribalism, and that's fine for them, it is, but they expect me and you to play along.
Where you fucked up at.
You can like whoever you like for whatever reason you like them, and I won't give a fuck.
I don't care.
This would satisfy what I've wanted from Canelo Alvarez, to remain at 168 pounds and take out the trash, take out the garbage surrounding that division, like Jermall Charlo and Demetrius Andrade, like David Benavidez, who really was my first choice, but he scurried off in a hurry to fight a guy with only 9 fights.
What are you gonna do?
I don't know why David Benavidez is ducking Canelo Alvarez. What is he afraid of? He's bigger, he's younger, but he wants to fight a guy with just 2 handfuls of fights? That's what you want to do?
Chicken shit.
So Jermall Charlo emerges as a frontrunner. Jermall Charlo, who held an Instagram live session with his old buddy Demetrius Andrade, and they were talking about fighting each other in September. I don't think
that's gonna happen.
Jermall Charlo, a quasi-retired fighter who, for me and my money, looks to be in the twilight years of his career, even though he's in the same age bracket as Canelo. I feel like whatever he was going to do in the sport of boxing, he must have done it already. And a fight with Canelo, at minimum, would afford him the chance to cash out.
You won't make any money fighting Demetrius Andrade. You won't make history, but with Canelo, you can make enough change that you can retire on.
You're gonna get your fucking ass kicked. You're gonna get yourself knocked out. I saw the Montiel fight over 2 years ago. How he struggled with that guy. With today's Canelo, Canelo ices him.
He knocks him out.
Do I feel sorry for this guy? No, I don't, because you were already offered this fight, and you wanted to play sides of the street.
Gee, I wonder who gave him that advice.
Gotta get rid of these kinds of fighters in the American market. This is no ambassador for American boxing, and it's time to discard the dead weight.
This guy's an absentee champion. He's been out of action for 2 years, and the WBC has allowed him to hold on to that middleweight title. Hopefully, if Canelo Alvarez puts him out of his misery at 168,
maybe the title will go vacant, or maybe they will elevate Carlos Adames, WBC interim champion, to full champion.
maybe.
See what happens. No, I wouldn't mind it at all. To see Canelo Alvarez pounce on another useless fighter at or around these weights, I'd relish the opportunity. I'd buy that for $1.
And a hit dog will holler.
Who knows? Maybe that can be a segue to a David Benavidez fight next May.
Fingers crossed.
And finally, this past weekend's fight, the Matchroom show between Regis Prograis and Danielito Sorrilla, Oscar De La Hoya chimed in saying, another shitty card from Eddie Hearn in the U.S. Go back to the U.K. and watch another fight of the year candidate July 8th between Virgil Ortiz and a Montestanionis.
Boy, Oscar De La Hoya's really got a hard-on for Eddie Hearn.
In Oscar De La Hoya's own mind, it's almost like he's angry that Canelo left him and he's taking it out on Eddie Hearn, when if he had done what he had to do, Canelo Alvarez would have still been over there. And at this time, he's going through the same thing with yet another big star under Golden Boy, another marquee fighter in Ryan Garcia. And what is he focusing on?
This guy doesn't learn.
He's focusing on Eddie Hearn. He's focusing on Matchroom shows.
How many big shows has Golden Boy put on this year?
Aside from the one where their only remaining golden goose got flatlined by Gervonta Davis.
Oscar continued.
Like Bob Arum said, Eddie Hearn has no clue what he's doing in the United States. I've been promoting for 20 years and will promote for another 40.
Not if things keep going the way they've been going at Golden Boy Promotions. I'm sorry to say that if they lose Ryan Garcia, if they lose that acquisition...
What do they really have? I mean, seriously. It's rich. It's comical watching Oscar De La Hoya carry on like this when his only man at light heavyweight, Zurdo Ramirez.
Remember that he blew the weight by a wide margin? Remember that Golden Boy Promotions had to issue out a public apology to all those who bought a ticket as a result that show got scrapped?
And look at what he's going through with Ryan. An almost identical situation to what he went through with Canelo before Canelo severed ties to him.
With him.
He claims that Eddie Hearn doesn't understand the U.S. market, and yet Canelo Alvarez still chose to leave Golden Boy for Matchroom, saying that Eddie Hearn is the best promoter in the world.
I mean, if Oscar De La Hoya is this promotional wizard like he claims to be, then why hasn't Golden Boy gone global like Matchroom has gone global? Because Matchroom is no domestic outfit. It might have started as a domestic, UK-based outfit, but it's grown exponentially since then, and Golden Boy has only shrunk.
They've only gotten smaller and smaller and smaller over time. I mean, you don't see Golden Boy Promotions doing shows in Australia, right?
Right.
Or the UK, not that many in the US. How long has it taken them to get this Virgil Ortiz versus a Montestanionis fight over the line? How many times has that been postponed?
Come on, that's low. That's not Oscar's fault.
It's not Eddie Hearn's fault that Canelo left Golden Boy, but Oscar seems to blame him for that. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander.
Don't get your feelings hurt by a bit of banter.
Oscar is failing, ladies and gentlemen. Oscar is failing as a promoter, and it's been a downward spiral for Golden Boy ever since Canelo left Golden Boy Promotions.
Alongside Eddie Hearn, Canelo Alvarez broke the attendance record in this country. That didn't happen under Golden Boy. That happened under Matchroom.
Matchroom, who managed to fill out the big room at Madison Square Garden. 19,000 people there for a women's boxing match. And you're telling me that Eddie Hearn doesn't know what he's doing?
Golden Boy's got a couple of female fighters under contract. Why don't you show him how it's done, Oscar? Why don't you see if you can get 19,000 people to watch two of your girls fight?
Fat fucking chance that ever happens. This unique brand of ignorance.
American ignorance.
It's embarrassing to watch Oscar De La Hoya flap around like this. He used to throw this kind of shade at Floyd Mayweather Jr., but he has since moved on, and he's got a real axe to grind now with Eddie Hearn.
It's not going to change that Canelo left you and Ryan wants to.
I don't think that's because of the bang-up job you were doing with those fighters.
Oscar's got his own problems to where he don't need to worry about Matchroom and what Matchroom are doing.
If Ryan Garcia manages to sever ties with Golden Boy Promotions and he crosses over to the PBC, that'll be yet another golden goose, another big-name fighter that leaves Golden Boy Promotions.
Not a good advertisement. Not a good look for Golden Boy.
Not that Ryan Garcia is the easiest fighter to work with, because he isn't, but it looks a lot like history is repeating itself there.
What would be the state of Golden Boy then?
Oscar behaving like a jilted ex is nothing new, if we're being honest.
It isn't.
The shade that he throws at Eddie Hearn and Matchroom.
All he's doing is making an ass out of himself.